I'm Shane Seguin. I'm joined today by Jim Watson, Mayor of the City of Ottawa. Thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Shane.
So the Confederation Line opened to great fanfare September 14, 2019, and there was a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation for the culmination of many years of work and the first light rail service in the City of Ottawa, and also 60 years since the last electric streetcar ran in the city. What does the opening of the line mean to you as a citizen, as a mayor, and to the city in general?
Well, thank you for the question. Thank you for your advocacy as well. It means a lot. It's a point of pride, obviously, and notwithstanding, like any new system opens and has its glitches. I think generally people who have traveled on the system realize it's a very good first start. We need to expand farther east, west, and south, which we're doing as we speak. But it's a sense of pride that we reached 1 million, and that's usually the threshold to start going with a new mass transit system, because we couldn't continue with the bus service that was basically clogging the downtown streets. We'd reached capacity of about 8,000 people in and out of the downtown an hour. We're now at have the capacity for 24,000 people in and out of the downtown. So I think the system is a very good one. Obviously, every time there's any kind of a delay or so on, that frustrates people, and I recognize that. But the vast majority of people are having a positive experience, and we've got to make sure that we minimize any technical glitches on a go-forward basis.
So what has the opening of the line meant for the city, and how has the city changed as a result?
I think you can see, seeing is believing, the old expression that if you go out to Blair Station, you'll see one new apartment has already risen and people living in it, another one's under construction, and I believe they have space for 2 or 3 more apartment buildings within walking distance of the LRT. We're seeing, for instance, Bayshore just announced 2 major towers because there's going to be an LRT station at Bayshore on phase 2. And you're starting to see what we call TOD, or transit-oriented development, taking place exactly where we wanted it to take place, in the circumference area around the stations. We have a plan, for instance, of the City of Ottawa at the LeBreton site next to our new library that we'll be announcing shortly. There's a space for an affordable housing community, which again will be walking distance to the Pimisi station at LeBreton Flats. So it does a couple of things. First of all, it's a great economic boost to our city in terms of jobs created. It makes travel more efficient. It allows us to do transit-oriented development. And at the same time, it allows people choice to, if you're a student at Carleton, you always wanted that elusive apartment on Bank and Sunnyside in that area. Well, that's very expensive. You can now move farther south or farther east or west and be connected and connect LRT with the Trillium Line with the Confederation Line and vice versa.
So I'm a big fan of Montreal and their underground city. It connects the metro to multiple buildings, multiple destinations, shopping, and etc. We're starting to see that now in Ottawa with the Rideau Centre being connected to the light rail, Parliament Station being connected to the Heritage Building, to the Sun Life Building, Lion Station to Place de Ville. How do you see this expanding? Do you see that there will be an incentive for developers or even existing buildings to renovate, to tap in, to connect?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and my hope is the answer is yes, that will take place, because it's in the best interest of those businesses that you mentioned to have that connectivity. I noticed, for instance, I heard the other day that the Farm Boy store at the Rideau Centre, which is just at the top of the escalators before you go down to the LRT, they've had tremendous success just in the first couple of months. Sales have gone through the roof because people are walking right by. They're going to get lunch or breakfast or something to bring home to make dinner. So you're going to see a lot more of that. Queen Street Fair, for instance, which is connected in the Sun Life Building, as you mentioned, is another good example of that, and the Place de Ville connection with the large number of government employees. So it makes it for an easier commute for people, a friendlier commute, because you're not outside as often, waiting for a bus. You're underground, the train lets you off. You can go up escalator and elevators to Place de Ville or Rideau Centre. And I think you'll start to see more of that. We're not going to have as much underground, and obviously the tunnel was the big investment in phase 1. Phase 2 will have more cut and cover as we go farther west to Algonquin College and Bayshore and Moody Drive, and farther east to Place d'Orleans and Trim, and farther south to the airport. But another good example is the airport is connected right into the terminal. They're building the LRT station right into the Ottawa terminal, and at the same time building a hotel and then other new amenities as well.
So the line opened September 14th. Really big service change was the name given to it for October 6th when the parallel bus service came to an end. Everything had been proceeding quite well, I would say, to that point, and then some issues started developing. How do you feel about those issues? How do you feel about the future, that one day it will be resolved, and what can you tell the people of the city about some reassurance that it will be resolved one day? It might take a bit of time, but it's going to be rock solid, it's going to work, and people aren't going to have to worry about this no longer.
Yeah, I think, look at, when you buy anything new, there are always challenges. When I bought a new house, I have a whole list of deficiencies that have to get taken care of. And that's on a small scale. Multiply that by 1 million, and that's what you get when you have the train system, because, every person who's adversely affected or has to wait longer because of a glitch or a problem is frustrated at that moment. I firmly believe the vast majority of people are pleased with the system. Those who have had a bad experience because of a delay or a technical issue or so on have had a bad experience, and they're probably not happy at that moment. But our job is to continue to put pressure on RTG and RTM and our own staff to minimize those disruptions, because, as you know, a disruption has a terrible ripple effect, because, if the platform is designed for, one train of 600 and then a train is delayed, that doubles up to 1,200 and you get a really tight, congested platform. So we have to continue to do better, but, if you look at the history of any transit system, whether it's the TTC in Toronto, the Metro in Montreal, the SkyTrain, you hear stories and you see the newspaper articles of the time, the system broke down, people were trapped. I know in Montreal they had a flood one day last month, and there was a fire and people had to walk through the tunnels in Toronto. Kitchener had 4 accidents with their LRT in the first month because it's not a segregated system like ours. And sometimes people don't like the fact that I use these comparators, but I think we have to, because we've never had a mass transit system in Ottawa. We've had a bus system and minimal rail system with the old O train. So, my message is, obviously, first and foremost, we apologize because we want to do better for our customers. But secondly, continue to use the system, continue to offer us feedback. We have people, on the stations and riding the trains all the time looking for ways to improve, whether it's the material on the floor to make it less slippery, or whether it's the red vests that we've asked to stay on a little longer to help people with that transition. Because as you pointed out earlier, Shane, this is the largest change in our bus system in the history of OC Transmo, going back how many decades?
Now, I guess to follow this up, what kind of incentive has the city available to sort of push RTM to rectify these deficiencies and the issues, to make sure that things move in the right direction and we have reliable service?
Well, under our contract, we have the ability to hold back and deduct funds from their annual or their monthly payment, and we've done that on a couple of occasions. We've also offered our customers a fare freeze for January, February, and March until we stabilize the problems that we've experienced. And we're starting to see some progress. We've had a relatively good 4 or 5 weeks with minimal problems, no major issues except on New Year's Eve, obviously, which was a challenge for us. But we're getting faster at getting the door issues resolved. But again, there's sometimes human error, there's sometimes technical glitches. Sometimes a passenger holding a door is going to create a ripple effect that we got to get that message through to our passengers. Don't rush, because another train will come in 4 minutes. And the irony is, by doing that, you're going to delay yourself trying to get somewhere fast by 20 minutes probably. So I think, people are learning that etiquette. Even, when people first started, they were, everyone was trying to get in the train, everyone was trying to get out of the train at the same time. Now we have the arrows on the platforms, wait out here, let people disembark, and then let people get on the train. So, we'll keep the feet to the fire of RTM and RTG because they're our partners, but at the end of the day, they have to deliver, and if they don't get paid.
So now my next question, moving beyond issues and deficiencies that are being experienced, it was in the news recently, Hamilton's LRT system. The provincial government was the financial backer of that. Its future is now in jeopardy or uncertain. As we are partners with the city, the provincial government, and the federal government, I believe I read last year that we had reached financial close on both of the extensions. What kind of security do we have that a similar fate could befall us at this point? Are we far enough into it that everything that's a done deal, everything's locked in?
Well, in government and life, you can never say never. At the end of the day, a government can withdraw its funding, but we have Treasury Board approval and Cabinet approval by both the federal and provincial governments. We had the Premier of Ontario and the Prime Minister of Canada both announced their funding, so they'd have to take a big step backwards. And finally, the work has already started. If you look at the Airport Parkway, all of that clear cutting that's taking place and the building of the bridges is actually phase 2, and we've got work being done in the east end, the west end, the south end, of Riverside South, and to the airport. So that work is already being done. So it'd be very difficult for a government at this point to withdraw. Now we have our act together because we put a plan in place. We went out for public consultation. We nailed down where stage 2 is going to go. And that was accepted and praised by the provincial and federal governments, which is it's a good thing. So I feel sorry for the people of Hamilton, but they, for whatever reason, there seem to be a lot of arguments and opposition and so on to certain routes that they're going to take in Hamilton. We got a lot of community buy-in that this was the best route to follow to go to the east end, the west end, and the south end.
Now, talking about stage 2, it's being extended east towards Place d'Orleans and Trim Road, west to Moody and Baseline, and south to Limebank and the airport. Can you talk about some of the important destinations that the stage 2 will serve and how it will really complete what has been started with stage 1?
Yeah, I think, people will see a tremendous difference in the reliability and the crowding issues when we get stage 2 open, because right now, as you know, everyone in the west end is getting dropped off, or by and large, at Tunney's, and that creates congestion. And then the east end, it's Blair, and then the south end, it's Herdman. When you have the extensions to Moody Drive and Algonquin in the west, and Place d'Orleans and Trim in the east, and Riverside South and the airport in the south, it disperses that crowd so that you don't have everyone, huddled together on one platform at Tunney's, for instance. And it also helps, the post-secondary institutions, that you'll be able to take a class at Ottawa U and Carleton and Algonquin College, all connected by train, and even the Centre des Métiers, which is the skilled trades building of La Cité, is connected because it's just kitty corner from Trim Road. So, I think that's going to be a tremendous positive addition to get that system in place so that people will not have to travel as far by bus, for instance. And then, of course, we're working very hard to get the federal and provincial governments to help us with phase 3, because we want to go to Canada, Stittsville, and Barrhaven. Those are the 3 fastest growing areas of the city.
And speaking quickly about stage 3, where do things stand right now? At what stage are things at for applying for financial assistance and partnership in that?
Well, we've done the environmental assessments for Canada and Stittsville, and we're in the process of doing the one for Barrhaven. So that will then get us a better idea of what the costs are going to be. I've already raised it with the Premier Ford of Ontario, and with Minister McKenna, the infrastructure minister with the federal government. So we have to engage the local MPPs and MPs to ensure that they are on board, because this is obviously the finishing touch of the Ottawa side. And then, of course, we've got I call phase 4 is our connections to Quebec, how we get, LRT back and forth to that city, because obviously people live in Ottawa, work in Gatineau, and vice versa, and they need better, transit options that they have right now.
Now, in recent times, there's been a lot of conflicting reports as far as the Prince of Wales Bridge. The Prince of Wales Bridge is owned by the City of Ottawa. You in the past have actually said that you'd like to see the train cross there. However, at the election, I believe it was Catherine McKenna who made an announcement that they were going to be restoring it for pedestrian and cycling. Where does it stand at this point? Is it still possible that we could have the Trillium line or a train cross from Bayview to go to Gatineau, or is it seeming less and less likely? Is that option still open?
Well, it's still open. It's still a possibility. It is a rail bridge first and foremost. What Catherine, and I've supported her on this, indicated is that, we need to do something with it in the interim. We don't have the money to repair it as a rail bridge because that's very expensive, and we don't have plans at this point because we haven't got phase 3 funded. We got phase 2 funded and shovels in the ground. So what we have to do is, in the interim, see if we can't get the federal government to help fund to rehabilitate it to a cycling and pedestrian standard that's safe, and I have every confidence that Catherine is going to live up to that because she's been very good at keeping her promises on these kinds of infrastructure projects. Now, down the road, yes, there's a possibility it would be converted back to rail, but at this stage, our staff have said that it's, we don't want to overwhelm the Bayview station because that's the east-west, north-south connected site. And if we have another group of thousands of passengers coming to Bayview, it may overwhelm the system. So, we have to get phase 2 done, which will allow us to disperse the crowds more evenly east, west, and south. And as I said, let's get some use out of that bridge in an interim basis with respect to cyclists and pedestrians, and move from there.
Mayor Watson, thank you very much for your time. Happy 2020, and look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for your interest in our LRT system. We're very proud of it, and obviously it's, I think we've had millions of users so far, and we've got to continue to improve it, but I think it's the right system at the right time for our city.
And lastly, what would be your favorite station?
Probably Pimisi, because of the Aboriginal art contributions that have been made, the paddles in the shape of a canoe on the roof, and the red moose, and the silver eel, which is in Algonquin language Pimisi. That's why we call it that station. I think it's pretty special. And even the Rideau Center, they have art exhibits in the downtown in those glass cases. And I think once the coffee shops start moving in there, that'll bring more ambiance. And I'd like to see more buskers participating in activities in the stations as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.